Episode 71 of the Fired Coaches podcast. We have Coach Scott Pera on, who is currently the general manager of men's basketball at Penn State. Coach Pera has spent time at the high school level. He's been at Division I stops at Arizona State, Pennsylvania, Rice, and now Penn State. Won high school titles, had a lot of success. Coached James Harden in high school, and honestly, in a busy time with the portal and everything that is Division I right now, just greatly appreciate Coach Pera taking some time. So, Scott, thanks a lot for sitting down.
No, I appreciate you having me. And I got to say, I've done many podcasts and interviews over the years. I never thought I'd be on the Fired Coaches podcast, but I am happy to share my experiences and take this wherever you want it to go.
No, absolutely. I greatly appreciate it. And, it's interesting and kind of doing a little research on you prior to this episode and just all the stuff I've seen. You seem like a very instant, trustworthy guy that's just very honest. I don't know how that just comes off in the videos that I've seen. And I guess, where does that all start with you? Is that from family roots from growing up, or where did you just develop that?
First of all, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me because if that's who I've tried to be. And sometimes, when I was a head coach at Rice and maybe even my head coaching days in high school, some of my assistants get a little nervous about my honesty because but I just always felt it was the best way to operate. It doesn't mean that's what everybody wants to hear. It's hard, even as an adult at 58, sometimes when people are real honest with me, it's hard, but you appreciate them more because it shows they actually truly do care because they're giving you the truth. And sometimes then you got to be able to take the truth and improve yourself or make changes. And so that's the way I tried to operate as a coach, as a mentor, and even as a friend in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those things. I agree with you. As you get older, you really appreciate that transparency and just the honesty, right? Maybe in that moment you don't as much, but certainly you grow that trust very easy using that. So take us back. Penn State Harrisburg guy. You get into JV coaching at Palmyra. You do a little bit of an assistant job at Elizabethtown. Shout out to the D3 world. So, what was that all coaching like for you when it was like, okay, I'm graduating college. Like, I want to try this coaching thing. What was kind of your idea or mindset to kind of get that all started?
Well, it's an interesting thing back that far because the twists and turns that life takes. I graduated Penn State Harrisburg, but and this is unbeknownst to most, my junior and senior year of college, the reason I was at Penn State Harrisburg, I was coaching Division III baseball at E-Town to start. So I was coaching a varsity sport as a junior and senior in college of guys that were older than me, some of them, when I was an assistant coach. So that's how I got into the coaching aspect. But look,
where did the baseball thing come from?
The guy that got the job was my Legion coach when I was 16, 17, 18. And then I helped him when I was 19 come coaching the Legion team. I was a good baseball player. I had tremendous passion for baseball. And John Gurgic was one of the great mentors of my life. And so when he asked me, it was like, I'll figure out my life. I transferred from West Virginia. I went to Penn State Harrisburg. I drove back and forth route, I think it's 230 after class every day to practice, and just an incredible experience. And we had great success. He was a great coach. And so that's how it kind of got the coaching bug really going in me. But then when you graduate college, it's like, okay, real life hits you now. I'm supposed to be whatever, use my college degree or get a real job. And so I did that. I started working in Lancaster at a company called G.E. Richards. I don't even know if it still exists, but I was selling copiers and fax machines. And a very close friend of mine at the time, named Mike Gaffey, became the head coach at Palmyra High School. And he said, I want to take this job and I want you to be my JV coach and assistant. Can you do it? I thought, well, I'm not sure. I just started this job and not sure how my parents will take this. But at the end of the day, I quit my job. I went back to be a teacher, started taking elementary education courses. I would drive every Tuesday and Thursday after practice an hour to Chambersburg to take night classes. I did that for 2.5 years while I was coaching JV basketball at Palmyra, and I got my teaching degree, and then got sidetracked there when Bob Schlosser at E-Town hired me to be coach basketball for a year. But I missed coaching the high school kids so much that I went back and coached JV basketball after being a D3 assistant, and people thought I was crazy for doing that.
I believe it. I mean, the drive that you had to make, that's insane in itself. I mean, just shows your worth right there and trying to get the experience that you were talking about. Annville-Cleona, you get the head high school varsity job there. A lot of success. Some of the videos that are still around that when you were a young whippersnapper. Not that you're old by any means right now, but that team that you took, I think it was 30-3 state title, Hershey Park Arena. Talk about that season, because there were a ton of overtime games, if I'm not mistaken, in that season, maybe even in that championship game, and just what a special ride that was. And I guess, the guy who started doing JV, could you imagine that all of a sudden you'd be doing, varsity stuff and having that quick success?
Marks, we could do an entire podcast on that team. Honestly, we could, because the stories I tell are so kind of unbelievable that I wouldn't believe them unless I lived it. So I was so fortunate to the good fortune that we had, and the plays that some of those kids made, some luck that we had, all the stars lined up. And I lived basically, those of you that are old enough that will be watching this remember the movie Hoosiers. If you went through the parallels of that season to the movie Hoosiers, you would be shocked at how similar they were. And yes, some incredible finishes, incredible memories. And to lead up into that state championship, to give you a little perspective and background, when I took over the job, I was 27, and Annville had just reached the state final the year before and lost in the state championship to Shady Side Academy. That coach then moved to a big 4A school. They hired me from our JV coach to Annville-Cleona head coach. And my first 3 years, we lost in the first round of district, the first round of district, and the first round of district. So they were ready to, maybe fire me.
The Twitter trolls would have been going crazy at that point.
Thank goodness for no Twitter. I might not have had a job after 3 years, because that school in that town had established that tradition. And here we were, this young guy that they brought in and took a risk on, couldn't win a playoff game. And then year 4, now I knew the summer before year 4 we were good. Did I think we could win a state championship? No, it wasn't even in my wildest dreams. But the district championships were played in Hershey as well. And Hershey's where I grew up. Matter of fact, Hershey Park Arena was right across the street from the apartment my mom and I lived in. As a kid at Hershey, you always dreamt of playing there. I went to games. I saw Sam Bowie, Greg Manning, Robert Tate, over and over and over, guys play high school games in there. And so as a kid, you always want to play there. And in my junior and senior year of high school, we lost in the game before it both times. So now here I have this chance to try to win a district championship in Hershey, with that really good team. And we made the district championship. We were playing in Hershey Park Arena. My dreams were coming true, and we lost. And because of that loss, I think York Catholic, who won the district, may have been a little satisfied, as we would have been had we won. But we lost, and we had this chip on our shoulder and this drive to continue to play, because the kids were so much fun to be around, and such a great group, that we won 5 in a row and won a state championship, the only one in school history. Marcus, it's the second one in the history of the county. 1940 was the other one. There hasn't been one since, and there won't be another one for another 30, 40 years. It was just incredible what occurred.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. Like you said, this obviously could be a whole podcast that way. Do you think, and I know nobody will believe in it, right? Like a good loss. But to me, that sounded like maybe a moment where it was like, hey, like pressure's off us now.
I was crushed. Yes. But looking back on it, no question about it. And I've told people this in a million interviews I've done. If we win that district title, there's no way we win the state championship. And some of my players would laugh and say, Coach, you're crazy. Yeah, we would have. I don't know. That was a big goal. And if we'd achieved that, we would have been celebrating for a pretty good time. Now another piece to this, the state championship run, and this is where the story gets really crazy. On back-to-back Saturdays in the state playoffs, in the quarterfinals, and then a Saturday later in the state championship, with zeros on the clock, we were losing both games and won them both.
Last second free throws, obviously.
One kid got fouled down 3 at the buzzer. He made all 3 to send it to overtime, and we won in overtime. In the state championship, we were down 1 in overtime. Kid got fouled at the buzzer, made 1 of 2, sent it to second overtime, and we won in double overtime.
Have you ever thought about writing a book on this season?
I have. And I thought about it. Matter of fact, I have on this computer here about a 30-page pitch that I have sent to a couple writers. One of them in the last 3 months, because he knows the story. He's still alive. He was around when it happened. I've done some stuff with him now that I'm back in PA. I'm kind of waiting to see if he's going to grab this and run with it or not, but I've got 30 pages down. It's funny you said that.
Interesting. No, that does seem like an interesting story. Like you said, just with the county titles and, again, like you said, it mimics kind of that, Hoosier folklore kind of thing. You know
Marcus,
what I mean?
to the depth of the kid who made the 3 free throws to tie the game was the backup point guard who didn't play the whole year, similar to the Ollie kid in Hoosiers who made the free throws. That's how crazy it is. And our best player was a kid named Mark Lineball. And if you lined up his jump shot next to Jimmy Chitwood's, you'd think they were identical.
Really?
Yes.
Sometimes it's just fate, right? Sometimes it's just meant to be. I mean,
look, and when you're a part of it, that's weird because you're like, why me and how this? And because then it led to what we're about to talk to about next. It led to all that stuff in my life. And but that's where it all started for me, Annville-Cleona, 1999.
Yeah. So you make the move to California, to Artesia, I believe it is, become the head high school coach out there. So what was the transition from you being a PA guy to getting out to California?
Well, the transition was due to my now working on 26th year of marriage to my wife, Alyssa. She and I were dating. She moved to California when we were dating. I kind of said, okay, see you later. Have fun. Neither of us thought it would go anywhere. And when we were apart, we realized we liked each other more than we thought. So after we won a state title, I met her in Vegas. We flew out, me and some of my buddies. We used to go out for Kentucky Derby weekend. She drove in so I could see her. I took a ring with me and I proposed, and we made a deal. I would go back to coach Annville. I couldn't leave after winning the state title. I'd go back and coach them one more year while she stayed in California. Then after the 2000 season, I would resign. We would get married in Hershey, pack up the car, and I would go join her in LA. And that's what I did. How I got Artesia job, the summer where we were apart, I was a teacher, so I had my summers off. So I'd go spend time with her because I knew I was going to move out there. I just didn't tell anybody yet.
Yeah.
So I'd spend like 10 days, 2 weeks, getting to know people. I figured I'm going to coach at a middle school somewhere, be a volunteer coach, get the lay of the land.
Like at that point, were you like, kind of like, that might have been my basketball peak was in PA.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which is okay, right? I mean, win a state title. I mean, anybody would take that, right?
And I was 31 or whatever when we won it. So I knew I wanted to coach again, but I didn't know anybody in California. So how was I going to dent this Southern California basketball landscape? I'm working a UCLA basketball camp in August of 98. The guy standing on the curb next to me, summer of 99. The guy standing on the curb next to me was working the camp. I got to know him. Hey, Scott, Bubba, what's your story? Oh, Annville, small town guy, welcome to LA. Well, that gentleman who was standing next to me is a guy named Neil Olshey. In the time since then, Neil Olshey has been the general manager of the Los Angeles Clippers and the Portland Trail Blazers for a decade. So that man then was an unemployed actor standing on the curb working UCLA basketball camp. So he had spent time coaching at Artesia as a volunteer while he was doing part-time jobs in his acting world. He got me the interview then with Stan Brown, the athletic director of Artesia, when I was driving cross country and the Artesia coach got fired.
Right place, right time.
And look, without the Annville stuff, they don't hire me. I mean, this is back in fax machine days, Marcus. So when they were already down to their Final Four, Neil got me a favor interview. And this Artesia team had been top 5 in the country for years. They had Ed O'Bannon, Charles O'Bannon, Jason Capono, Vondre Jones, all those kids. So that coach got in trouble. He got fired. They're down to their Final Four. Neil gets me the gift interview. Well, that AD must have walked in the office one day and had 50 pages of fax machine all over the floor because I sent him all the clippings from our Annville state title run. And next thing I know, I'm one of 5, then I'm one of 2, and then one day they offered me the job and I became the head coach at Artesia.
We could cut this podcast off. I mean, this is a lot of good stuff right here. This is crazy. So you're there, I believe it was 6 years, a couple times, LA Times Coach of the Year in 03 and 06, 7 league championships. Obviously, there's a lot of documentation about you coaching James Harden. I mean, coaching in LA and getting that program, which, like you said, the O'Bannon brothers, Jason Capono, I mean, was it all what LA basketball is, what people think of when they think of like California and LA basketball? Is that what it was? I mean, every single night, just a dogfight?
Yes. And I was overwhelmed. I'm not here to kid anybody. It was a challenge. Artesia had this great name and this incredible reputation, but now it had been destroyed because of the trouble that occurred. And here was this guy. And look, I'm also not naive to know I got the job because I was the new guy. I think they just wanted somebody that didn't know what occurred, had nothing to do with the SoCal landscape. Here comes this whatever young guy from Pennsylvania, had some success. Let's hire him. And so I was overwhelmed. And the first 2 years were very difficult for me. I told my wife, I probably wanted to quit 100 times. I wasn't sure I was getting through to the kids. I wasn't sure it was for me. It was so different than Annville, in so many ways.
Not to cut you off, but do you think there was any, and maybe now looking back at time, do you think there was any perception of you coming in and everyone being like, oh, this small town Pennsylvania guy is going to come in here, like, he's not going to be able to do anything? Do you think there was any of that?
100%. Some of it from my own team and my own parents. And look, I was and still am an intense guy, but at 32, I was really intense. And so I had a belief. I just had a belief. And so I knew one way to do it. That's the way I was going to do it. I know they were very, very skeptical, very critical. Some of it I deserved, and another part of it I wasn't going to waver. And so through the times of those first 2 years where we still had decent records, but we never beat a team we shouldn't have beat. In other words, I tell people all the time we were 22-7 the one year, 22-0 against teams we should have beaten, 0-7 against teams that were better than us. Like we didn't beat, we just didn't make any inroads. But then the third year, I had kind of invested in the sophomore group from day one. And now they were seniors and they were my guys. And we started 5 seniors. We were tough. I mean, really tough, physically tough, mentally tough. And we went 30-3, won 22 games in a row. We made the Final Four. We won the CIF championship. We made the Final Four of the state. We lost to Harvard Westlake in a game they played for some reason at the Long Beach Arena. It rained. The floor was wet. The other coach and I, who are good friends now, Greg Hilliard, we almost didn't play the game because the floor was that wet. And they beat us. And I just, my only regret of that day, that game, I would love to play that team on any other place, any other day, and see, because we were a pressing team, athletic, and it neutralized us. I'm not making an excuse. They deserved to win. They played better, but I'll never forget that Greg and I almost not playing the game.
Interesting. And I'll obviously get more into your story here as we continue to go along, but I know there's a video online when you got the Rice job as a head coach. And what does it, because I'm sitting there thinking, if I was you, what does it mean to have those guys from Artesia there, but then also the guys that you were coaching at Rice the day that you were getting that job? I mean, what was it like to have a group of guys from different spots that were there celebrating you, getting a head job?
As good as it gets. For me, that was, the crowning moment almost for me. I never really dreamt of being a Division I head coach, Marcus. That wasn't, when I was coaching at Annville, I wasn't up at night trying to worry about how I was going to be a Division I assistant it just didn't enter my mind. And when I went to Artesia, I was there with my bride and we were enjoying ourselves and we had success at Artesia, and it really didn't enter my mind. And then, till year 6 at Artesia, when we were really, really good, number 2 in the country behind Conley and Oden's team. And James was a junior and all kind of national recognition. Now I got college coaches calling me because they're recruiting my guys. I turned down a job at Tony Bennett, offered me as director of ops at Washington State. I almost became the director of ops with Jamie Dixon at Pitt, but then Herb called me and I ended up going there and James came with me. We don't need to get through all that. My point is, when you get in Division I, then to get your chance to be a division, because I know how hard it is. I mean, getting these jobs is so hard. And so to be there with Mike Rhoades for 3 years and Joe Carlgard offered me the job, and all those guys from Artesia being there and the reaction of the Rice kids is as good a moment professionally for me as anything I've ever done in terms of cutting down nets or winning championships.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's funny, we were talking, obviously, after Artesia, you're just mentioning, you go to Arizona State, James ends up going there. Like I mentioned to you, I think it was the first season I was in college coaching. We practiced at Wells Fargo. You're there. Again, we watched a game. I remember it because it was the greatest dunk I'd ever seen in person. James took off from just inside the free throw line. It was a charge, so it didn't count. But literally, it's just funny, nearly 15 years later, we're sitting here on a podcast, and we were in the same arena that night. We didn't know each other, obviously.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, but, talk about, getting that break, because that's what I loved about the video of you when you end up getting the Rice job down the road is you talked about, this is a win for all the high school coaches. because you knew that you were breaking through as that guy getting a head college job, and how many good high school coaches are out there. But talk about, that entry into Arizona State and going to work for Coach Sendek. And, again, a few years before, right, you're in Pennsylvania, you go and have this success at Artesia. I mean, at some point you have to, in my mind, if you're having that success in Pennsylvania, you go across the country in a really populated area. I mean, to me, going to Arizona State and now becoming a Division I assistant, like, you got to feel like you have something to prove, where you're just like, everywhere I go, I'm going to be able to get something done.
Yeah, I think, look, I and I've given this advice to many people over the years, because people were very nice to me and did a lot of great things for me. Neil Olshey, Sonny Vaccaro, many, many, many folks, the people back in PA. So look, you got to try and be the best you are where your feet are. And that advice, I know, has gone around to different people, but I've used that to so many others. If you get caught up in worrying about where you want to go or where you think you should go or what you deserve, you're going to have a real hard time getting there. Just try and be the best you can be where your feet are. And hopefully people will see that. And if you're genuine and you treat people right, a lot of times in life, right, you get breaks because of those things. And I've been fortunate because of that. And obviously the James Harden piece of my life is just so crazy and random. And I look back and I didn't see any of all this occurring. I thought he could play in the NBA, yes. But to do all this and then him being in Houston when I'm at Rice, how crazy is that? So when I went to Arizona State, I just wanted to be the best director of ops I could be my first year. And then when Archie left and Herb promoted me, I wanted to be the best assistant I could be there. But I had Derek and James. I had Derek Glasser, my point guard at Artesia that I coached for 4 years. He came with me to ASU. So I got to coach him for 4 more years. So I got to be with some guys that really mattered to me too, to see their success at Arizona State was so cool, being on the bench for it. Not just James Harden, but also Derek Glasser.
Yeah. So talk about Derek and James. I think it was 09, you guys went to the NCAA tournament. 08 and 10, you guys had NIT runs. Talk about, between Derek and James, that growth, because I believe it's documented that, James, it kind of took a little bit, not that it was, he wasn't a bona fide, star right away, but it took maybe until junior year where he really kind of exploded on the scene in high school. So you're seeing these guys as young, literal kids, and now you're seeing them develop into young men in college. I mean, just talk about like how unique of an experience that is, where it's not just one, but it's 2 guys.
Really cool. Both guys, they were such great friends in high school, such great friends at ASU, the point guard and the wing, and now Harden's the point guard, which is kind of ironic how that transformed. But Derek was so unselfish, so team oriented, and he and James both just had one underlying awesome thing in common. All they wanted to do was win. And so when you have your 2 best players with that attitude, even when they were 13 and 14 years old, I mean, James only averaged 18 points a game as a junior in high school, Marcus. I mean, I guess I'm the only guy that can hold him down, maybe. I don't know. I heard that old story about Dean Smith and Michael Jordan. I guess Scott Pera and James Harden are similar. He just didn't care about scoring. He didn't. He just wanted to win. And because of their attitudes and their talent, we won a lot. But there's a lot of teams with a lot of talent that don't win anything. I mean, because of other things get in the way. James was this underrated guy. You already brought it up. And so as James has had all these other names that were being talked about in Southern California, I just kept digging the stick in him. I just kept, because I believed he could be better than all of them. I did. I didn't know that he would be, but I thought he could be. And then he just wanted to work. Same with Derek. He kind of chip on his shoulder too. This kid comes from Beverly Hills to go to Artesia High School. Who does that? His dad's this multimillionaire gene mogul in Hollywood, and Derek's driving with me every day to Artesia High School, 10 minutes, south of Compton. I mean, so for him to do that, he had this chip on his shoulder edge. Like, I want to prove I can play with the best. And so the 2 of them together were the perfect mix, and just such a great joy to coach. So to watch them get to Arizona State and blossom into these, Derek's the all-time assist leader. He's the only guy in Arizona State history with 1,000 points and 500 assists, if you can believe that. And James Harden obviously is they'll be building statues and having busts in the Hall of Fame for him.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that about, James not, needing to have to score. And it's no different what I think when he got drafted by the Thunder.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
when he
well,
was the sixth man, right? Like he just fit in and just they were so good because of what
You're
he could
so right.
bring.
It's so similar and so parallel.
Yeah, he just fits. So, you know, you end up going back to PA. You go to Pennsylvania for a few years before you join Mike Rhoades at Rice. What was the move like going back kind of to your roots to the Pennsylvania area for those few years?
Again, professionally, a questionable move. A lot of people are like, why would this guy leave the Pac-10 to go to an Ivy League school? And at that point, my daughters were young. We're from Hershey. You know, Philly is only 100 miles away. I thought too professionally, I found it to be a struggle. Like now I wanted to be a head coach. Right now, you're at Arizona State. You're in the NCAA tournament. Your buddies are getting head coaching jobs. Now you got that kind of, okay, I think I can do this, and I kind of want to do it. But out west, there's so few schools, and so many guys that are great assistant coaches at UCLA and USC and Washington, Oregon, Arizona at the time. I mean, so how am I going to get one of these jobs? So I thought, okay, if I go back to Penn, because that's where I'm from, so now I'll have both coasts, right? I'll have this big time high major deal, and now I'll have the Ivy League academic piece to it. So there was some strategy to that maneuver. And Jerome Allen, just again, another guy that just really helped shape me and could not have been nicer to me. He hired me sight unseen. He'd never met me. He hired me on a recommendation, and he and I having 2 phone calls. And even though our years record-wise weren't successful those 2 years, I learned a lot from Jerome, and I'm super appreciative of Jerome of how he let me kind of grow as a coach.
Yeah, you were recognized as a top Ivy League assistant, and like I mentioned, you then joined Rice with Mike Rhoades, you're an associate head coach. Where did your relationship with Mike Rhoades begin? Because it seems like obviously you guys are back together again, but it seems like there's just such a strong synergy there. So where did that all begin?
Mike Rhoades, star guard at Lebanon Valley College in Annville, PA. Scott Pera, JV coach 5 miles down the road, taking my players to watch this star guy play Division III basketball. He was phenomenal. And their team was great. And in '94, they won the national title. And so I was at all their games and got to know some of the guys. I knew one assistant very well, friend of mine. Next thing you know, we're playing open gym together in the spring, going for pizza and a beer after the open gym, bonding over basketball. He is obviously a super passionate, intense guy as well. So he and I really hit it off. And then as the years went on, we stayed in touch. He gets the D3 job at Randolph-Macon. I'm in Artesia, but every Final Four, we would get together, stay with each other's rooms, hang out, talk about dreaming about being D1 head coaches someday, talking about it, trying to find a way to pay, blah, blah, blah. And we just formed a great friendship. And so when he got the Rice job, he called me and said, "Are you coming with me?" I said, "You got to talk to my wife. We just moved, man. 15 months, we just moved cross country. We're going to do this again with 2 girls under 5. You better talk to Alyssa."
Yeah. And you're back home.
And we're back.
But also you just did the Ivy League thing, and Rice I know is a very well-known institution. So right, like
Yes.
that fits you as well.
And I thought I could, that would be an asset to him, because him being at VCU, that wasn't exactly the same parallel in terms of who you could recruit. So we did it. My wife and I went, and thank goodness we did, because coaching with him there for 3 years was just awesome. Getting to doing something with one of your best friends, watching him live his dream was just phenomenal. And then that 3rd year, we hit it big with a very good year, and the top lined up that VCU opened up. And there I sat that night after we lost to the Utah Valley or somebody in the CBI. Mike's on a private jet to Virginia, and I'm sitting in my office wondering who the next coach of Rice is going to be.
Yeah, that's crazy. I love how you talked about, going back in time, how you guys were always talking at the Final Four, staying together and how do we get jobs and who's going to get this job? And I think that's a real thing, right? Anybody that's in the coaching world, whether it's D3, D2, D1, you're always thinking down the road and what could possibly be. But yeah, you're named head coach 17. Again, we were kind of talking about that press conference early on, what it was like having your Artesia guys there, your guys that you currently were coaching at Rice that you're still going to be coaching, how random it is that James Harden's with the Rockets at that time, like you had mentioned as well, too. I actually got a tweet last night, or an X message, whatever you want to call it these days, when I said that you were going to be the next guest on the Fire Coaches podcast. And Dan McHale, who was at Eastern Kentucky, said, "I can't wait to listen to this one because I believe I played Scott in his first game. It was Eastern Kentucky at Rice," he told me.
Okay, so listen to this story. And I hope he is listening or does listen and maybe corrects me. But I think in that game, my point guard, Aiko Adams, fouled a kid of his shooting a 3 with under 2 or 3 seconds left, and the kid made all 3 shots to win the game. That's how I lost my. I think I'm very close to that story.
Wow, you got something with last second shots.
I did. And look, again, it's hard for me to argue when I lose them because I certainly had some miracles go my way.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk about, just taking that program over. Obviously, you'd been a head coach before. You spent time at Division I. It wasn't like it was foreign to you. But taking that over, what was kind of your mentality going into that in terms of like putting your stamp on it? Or was it just continuing what Coach Rhoades had done? Like what was kind of your mantra going into that?
It was about me being me, putting my stamp on it. But also, I knew Mike now had great pride in a place that he had had success at. But you also have to remember now the transfer portal is beginning, or the transfer stuff is beginning, not the word portal yet. But so the whole team basically left. Igor went to Florida, had a great year at Florida. He went to play at the high major level, great player for us. Marcus Evans left. I went to VCU with Mike. So all the guys left, except for a couple of young guys. So my mantra was to rebuild this, but to build it long-term and make it sustainable. Look, I love Mike, but I knew Mike wasn't staying at Rice. I knew, and I was part of it. Like, let's get you to win and get you out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And get you back east and get you a head coaching job. And that's what we did. But with my perspective with the athletic director, Joe Carlgard, was, hey, Joe, my girls are young. I've been around. I'm not going anywhere. So he told me, Scott, we want you to build a program. And so that's what I did. And if you look at the win totals over the years, the first 5 years, we improved the win total every year, and we built a program that I was, very, very proud of.
And you recruited Trey Murphy.
Trey Murphy.
So Trey Murphy out of Cary, North Carolina. And obviously I remember him when he, was at Virginia, and the whole talk when he was leaving Rice to go to Virginia. And I think his story is also kind of one of those with the classic basketball story with the growth spurt of growing so much in time. But what did you see in him coming out of North Carolina that, maybe nobody else did, or just the angle that you were able to get him at Rice?
Yeah. So, we're coming off a 7-win year, right? I'm trying to build a program at Rice. We're in Conference USA. We recruit against nobody in the league. So what is our niche going to be? How are we going to beat Western Kentucky, Louisiana Tech, North Texas, Old Dominion? How are we going to beat these teams? We can't recruit the same players. I've got to get all these academic things to fit Rice. And so here's a kid. I thought what we going to have to do is we're going to have to be able to shoot from 4 or 5 positions. And we're going to have to take some flyers on some kids and hope that it works out, that other teams are not willing to do, because they don't need to, right? They just won 24 games. They don't need to go recruit a 6'4.5", 160-pound Trey Murphy. But Trey had an elite skill. Trey could shoot. And I remember Chris Kreider, a now assistant coach at Georgia Tech, on my staff at the time, and we were going back and forth, should I offer him? Chris, should we offer him? Chris, should we offer him? Because he had the one who kind of discovered him or got to know him first. And he was pretty indecisive on that. So I said, okay, July recruiting period, put me on Trey Murphy's court. First game, I want to go see Trey Murphy. It was in Atlanta. He's playing for his dad, the Durham Bulls, maybe, I think was the name of the team. No, that's the baseball team. Durham. Anyway, so I go watch the game. The kid's got like 4 or 5 threes at halftime. I called Chris and said, I'm offering him right after the game. He's like, okay, coach, great. I offered him. Now my whole goal was to not let anybody else get this kid before we got it done. So I offered him July 5th, 7th, whatever. Had him on campus for a visit the first week of August. And he committed on the visit.
Perfect timing, right? Kind of see him right when you get some eyes on him. Is that the only time you watch him in too, where you didn't want to like draw attention, that you were kind of all around his games all the time and stuff like that?
I went a couple more times, but I was at that point, I was just like, look, I hope he goes good enough. I hope he goes 0 for 100, actually.
Yeah.
I don't want, Furman was trying to get him. A couple others, he's only had 3 or 4 offers, but I know Furman was one of them, because I know they were mad at us, for kind of coming in there, taking him out of his home state. But boy, you talk about another kid who just wanted to do things right. What a joy to coach and watch him grow like that. I've never seen anything like it. It was like you're watering a plant. The kid would come up a half inch taller every other week.
That's crazy. Talk about because again, you mentioned, every year you're getting better. There's some fifth and sixth place finishes in that Conference USA, and you're mentioning some of these teams that, had a lot of success, even NCAA tournament success. You're going to the CBI. That last season, you were 11-21, 5-13 in league. Did you think that, again, you had built it up and it was just one, poor season. Did you think that, anything was going to happen, or what all happened with that?
Okay, Marcus. So here we go. Yeah. So this is interesting, because here's kind of the way I look at it now. You kind of get fired for one of four reasons in my mind. You did something stupid, immorally, or just dumb. You've had a team that's not any good for multiple years, right? You have a culture problem, or it's circumstantial. Now, of the four, I'd say the circumstantial one is probably the least percentage. But if you look at mine, I would say mine was pretty circumstantial, because we just won 19 games the year before. Rice has only won 19 games 7 times in the last 56 years or something. We had good group coming back. We had an unbelievable culture, 2 fifth-year kids, Travis Evie and Max Fiedler, but Cam Sheffield got hurt in the summer. And there's one of the circumstances. Losing him was critical. 2-year starter, senior 4-man. Now I had to start a freshman in the new league. So again, another circumstance. We're moving up league. The other circumstance, which is the killer, what everybody watching this would say, new AD. My AD, Dr. Joe Carlgard, decided to get out of the business. And had he not, I would not be on the Fired Coaches podcast. I'd still be the coach at Rice. But that's a circumstance you can't control, right? So he decides to get out, but I'm not worried. We won 19 games. The worry I did have is that I scheduled up. Like, in other words, we're going to the Americans. So we were planning on this transition. I got a 3-year extension on top of my 4-year. I know I'm going to be the coach. So I scheduled up. We played at Houston. We played at Texas. We played an MTE that year that had Indiana State that won 30 games. Irvine won 25 games. New Mexico at Donovan Dent won 28 games. So we really scheduled up. So our preseason record was not what we had hoped. We were probably 6-7, where, normally you're 8-5 and 9-4 going in the league. So now, again, another circumstance that it is what it is. And then join the league, I knew when my AD kind of stopped talking to me that I knew, we were in trouble. But with about 6 games left in the year, I called a meeting with him, because I'm a pretty upfront guy. And by the way, this is also, I'm a big boy. At this point, I'm 55 years old. I've been coaching for 30 years. Let's talk about this and tell me what's going on. Just tell me the score. So I called the meeting. I'm in the meeting with him. There's 6 games left, and he just kind of gave me the old, we're pulling for you, Scott. Okay. Told my staff, we better win some games here, or we're in trouble. We win the first 2. I think the first one was at Memphis. So we win at Memphis. We come home against East Carolina on national TV and beat them. I'm like, all right, 4 games to go. If we can split these, maybe. And we lost all 4. So I knew we were in trouble.
Yeah.
The lack of communication, the record wasn't good enough, new league and new AD.
Well, it's interesting how many times, again, this is episode 71, and how many coaches we've had on here that, again, there is a lot of these where I don't think people look to see that, when, like you said, if there's changes in leadership, I can't control that, right? Like the person that I came with, that we were building something for the future, and all of a sudden that could change within a day, right? It's unfortunate to hear that. That 04-05 season, or excuse me, 04-05, the 24-25 season, you were out of it then. What did kind of that year give you? Obviously with family being, in the PA area originally, I know I read something somewhere where, and obviously now you being the GM of Penn State, and you can tell by what you said about, your kids getting to be back by grandparents. And having, like at the time, I think when you guys moved back, there was like 3 sets of grandparents and things like that were still around. And just being able to, get to kind of see the grandparents and stuff like that, for family and everything, was that kind of a, hey, I'm going to get back to PA? Or did it just happen to be where it's like, I'm a year out of it, and Mike Rhoades called, and it's Penn State, and it's Mike Rhoades, like you mentioned, there's great synergy there, and that's what we want to do. Kind of what really went into that year where you're kind of out of it and trying to sift through your thoughts?
Well, I'll start at the end of the year first, because at the end of the year, yes, those were my thoughts. It was kind of, this is Mike, it's Penn State, let's, because I was trying to become a head coach again. And when that didn't happen, that's when Mike gave me a call. Mike knew what I was trying to do. We talk all the time. He knew who I was interviewing with. I got deep into one job. I didn't get it because somebody else kind of, again, how the business works, got fired at the school. Nobody thought that he'd want the job that I would, so he got that job and I was out. And so now I'm like, okay, now what am I going to do? And Mike gave me that call. So I was like, it's Mike, it's Penn State GM. This will be interesting. We'll kind of make this look how we want to look. Gets me back into business, right? Instead of being 2 years out. And so that's kind of why I did it. And it's been a lot of fun. I miss coaching. This isn't something I'm going to, I don't know who knows in my life what things go, but I want to coach again. I want to be a head coach again. And then maybe that's at a lower level. Who knows where that might be if I'm fortunate enough to get an opportunity. I still think I got that in me. But in the meantime, like I told you at the beginning of this, I'm going to be the best I can where I am. So I'm going to do everything I can to help Mike Rhoades and Penn State advance this program.
So what is that, going back to those Final Fours, you guys spending time together, and then obviously doing it once at Rice and now again, obviously I know, you being a GM and not an assistant, but still being heavily involved in everything that's going on there. I mean, talk about just working with a friend like that, because again, I think like people, always talk about, oh, it'd be great if we could get together in the staff. I mean, the percentages of that happening are so small. So that the fact that you've gotten to have this happen with you and Mike twice, I mean, what's that been like for you?
Yeah, it's been really cool. And I think, even someday when we're old, sitting on the porch drinking a Yingling together, it'll be even more enjoyable to tell the stories about how lucky we were, because he knows how I think. I know how he thinks. We both are intense guys, so things can get tense between us, and 10 minutes later be laughing. I mean, so the people around us sometimes think we're crazy, but there's never a moment where any personal part of it ever comes into it. It is all about trying to, state our beliefs, do what's best for the program, and help this thing, to win. And so even in the down, argumentative moments, it's still fun because, that's part of it too. And so, it's been really cool. Been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate.
Well, I think it's awesome too for you. Obviously you still want to be involved in coaching, being able to take that GM role on, because I don't know how many coaches are being able to see what a de facto GM, which I know is growing in the basketball world, and being able to see that. So, I mean, just managing the portal, recruiting, roster, fundraising, all that stuff, I'm sure it's crazy for you. So again, I appreciate you really sitting down and taking some time. I noticed all the books behind you. We always kind of wrap up with how you get better as a individual. How does that work for you? Is it reading books? Is it podcasts? What's kind of your jam when you can get some time?
Okay, I have to give a caveat. I am actually in a rental house in State College. So that was fully furnished. Those are not my books. I'm not taking credit for it. However,
I was gonna say, is maybe that a backdrop for the Zoom call? But
no, the owners may be happy to hear that they got it in. There's books mentioned in a podcast. No, look, I'm talking to people all the time, Marcus. I mean, you do this for 35 years. You get to know a lot of folks, and you will live in California, Phoenix, Houston, Philadelphia, LA. I mean, 4 of the biggest cities in the country. You have a ton of resources, a ton of great friends, a ton of mentors. So yeah, a lot of conversations on stuff, a lot of sharing of ideas. I've done a lot of podcasts. In fact, I did a podcast the whole year I was off, the Everything College Basketball, with a great group of guys. I was a guest analyst every week. Joy Dat had guests on, had Mike, had Dusty, had Sean Miller, so always trying to find ways to stay involved, get better, and learn and share ideas.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you again taking some time. Again, I know it's kind of heat of the off season, everything like that, as you're coming off the end of the year and whatnot. So I really appreciate you sitting down and jumping on. Like I said, just messaging with you and contacting you and seeing everything that's been, talked about you and all the interviews you've done. It just seems like a really honesty type guy, which I greatly appreciate.
Marcus, I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. I enjoyed reliving some of this stuff with you.